GM, welcome to Morning Markets. It is Monday, the 6th of October. New York session starts in 10 minutes, so later one today. But without further ado, we got Bitcoin closing a weekly candle, the highest ever weekly close on Bitcoin. So this should set up for continuation higher. As I mentioned, key trigger for me to look for continuation was a weekly close above 120k, which was the previous highest weekly close, and we got that. So all else being equal, you'd expect price to push higher on BTC. And that's exactly what we're doing. So last week's candle wicked the all-time high, but closed close to it. So we didn't close above it, but we did still close at the highs of this distribution, which is showing acceptance. And we're now trading today already above that distribution. So pre-New York session, we are pushing up. And what you're now seeing is 12 and 21 EMA bands. That is your respected trend support on this time frame. I've been mentioning it for weeks now. That has now produced new highs, so that becomes your primary trend if we do see any higher time frame pullbacks later on in this rally. But before that, let's zoom into the daily and see what is going on here. So I've really got two paths for Bitcoin. Of course, you have the red path, which I mentioned in the weekly outlook video yesterday. That would be retracing Sunday, Saturday, and Friday's candle, either today or tomorrow, which wouldn't be a bullish sign, as that's more indicative of this, where you pump up above 120k and immediately reject it. That shows that price didn't want to accept above there. Whereas what we're actually seeing now, and if I had to guess, I'd say that we're going to push to new highs. Bitcoin looks super strong here, and you're just getting one of those ripping rallies, which makes it hard for traders to get on board, and that's why it just keeps going higher until they FOMO in. And overall, just looking at if we can flip this August all-time high and hold it, then I'd be looking for momentum longs to trade higher. Again, these were the paths and trade of the weeks from last night's weekly outlook video. Make sure you take a look at it. This is what I'd be looking for. If I get any triggers where I can see this August all-time high is holding and we start pushing up, I'm going to look for momentum longs. Failing that, I'll be looking for a long within this consolidation. Now, if we can hold above 120k, that's my trigger. And if I see low time frame reversal setups, I'm going to be then looking for a swing long, so a different setup. But if I had to guess, I don't think we're actually going to move down to 120k, at least not anytime soon, maybe later on this week. And what we can actually see is the consolidation come from higher. So again, if it comes from higher, then I'll just be looking for the August all-time high to become the level that we can hold, even if that's on a reclaim. And then again, that allows me to manage my risk and then look for longs. So whatever level it is, whether it's 120k or the August all-time high, I'll be looking for a consolidation to form in that orange path, which then sets up highly likelihood that we're going to get a markup as you're building a base in price discovery, which is super bullish. As you can see, we've not been able to do that. Every time we trade above this level, we get flushed down. Trade above this level, we get flushed down. But this time, as I mentioned, when we flipped that value area high at 120k, this was the resistance to flip in all my morning markets videos, led to continuation higher, higher highs and higher lows. And, well, we saw that Bitcoin has been respecting some of its key trend bands. So what did I mention to you guys? I said, watch for the H150 EMA to hold as support on the next retest. And if you're patient, as you should be as a trend following trader, look at this. Where did we wick right to? After hitting the all-time high, back to the H150 EMA. That is trend trading 101. You want to buy in areas where other traders are buying. That is trend following. You're not contrarian trading or betting on a reversal or bucking the trend. No, you literally want to bid areas which algorithms and other traders are likely to bid, and the 50 EMA is one of those areas. It's a support band which algorithms are hooked up to, traders look to trade around, therefore it's likely to find support. So in a trend, instead of buying above the bands at the worst place, as you can see, every time we go too far above them, you retrace. You buy at something like the bands which are showing trend support. And it showed trend support over here, respect, so then you expect the respect to continue. You bid where other traders bid because that's the aim. You want to buy and have other traders buy with you, supporting the trend to new highs. That's the whole point. So trend trading is very simple if you let it be, and we found them on there. That's led to a nice push up this morning and got some key levels here intraday. So H1 12 and 21 bands not being respected anymore. It is this 50 EMA that is your trend support at the moment. And last week, the New York session had a high here on Friday at 124K. It was only on Sunday that we saw a push to all-time highs to take the liquidity. Therefore, the New York session, Wall Street, your ETF flows, they finished their trading week at 124K. All of this Sunday price action was a push through illiquid books, taking us above the highs. Therefore, New York session starting in 5 minutes now as I'm recording this. Any dip we get, you want to see the Friday high hold. That would be super strength. If that level is going to hold, that sets up for me a trigger definitely to look for longs to the all-time high and potentially beyond, as this is showing immense strength. That'd be higher low after higher low after higher low with these higher highs. That would be the high of last week from the ETFs in the New York session getting bid and turning into support instead of resistance. So that'd be a strong signal to look out for. Already pre-New York session, we're reclaiming the August all-time high, which is interesting. Maybe we are just going to move straight up to the all-time high, and from there, you just want to see what kind of reaction we get. Do we consolidate at the all-time high, or do we instead start to reject it and then have to chop lower for a little bit? I'm not sure. Those are the two scenarios to watch out for, but overall, Friday high is a key level to hold if we do come back to it. And really below Friday's high, that's when you then start looking at something like these equal lows here. So we go to the 15-minute chart. You've got two equal lows here. Liquidity targets, which can get targeted if we do lose Friday's high over here. So that's really a level to hold on any dips today. Pushing higher, lots of strength in this move, looking like they want to front run the New York bullishness that's going to start in a few minutes time, and probably going to see some volatility while recording this. So we'll check back in. But lose Friday's high, then you're looking at a move to the July all-time high, and that comes back to your H150 EMA, which we want to see hold and be respected as the trend support. Because below there, if we start disrespecting H150, disrespecting the July all-time high, then that probably sets up a move to this low over here at 121.5K, which I think invalidates the short-term momentum if we do get there. And then you're probably going to have to retest 120K and go for that consolidation path instead of the immediate continuation path higher. So far, so good. As long as we're above that Friday high, sets up for likely continuation higher. Below the Friday's high, you have more uncertainty where your H150 EMA is your trend support that has to then hold and stay respected. Otherwise, below the July all-time high sets up a move to the low and invalidates the short-term momentum. We probably have to mean revert and then consolidate. But if I had to guess, this looks strong, and I think traders are not positioned for this move and they don't know how to get on board because of the nature of the trend. It's just been green daily candle after green daily candle after green daily candle. Not really seen altcoins move. It's been Bitcoin led, which I said is important. The fact that you've got Bitcoin dominance being strong is half the reason this rally is actually showing strength on Bitcoin. So really watching to see, can we continue higher on Bitcoin dominance this week? So if you guys remember, we got a box here, which I've been looking at. What way does this break? Can we break higher? If we do find resistance, is it at these bands? If we can push higher, what is that going to be off the back of? Is it going to be off Bitcoin pumping and breaking out, or is it going to be more Bitcoin dampening? But more of that on the weekly outlook yesterday. Make sure to check it out. Today, keep it intraday levels. This is what I'm looking at in terms of BTC. When we look at the order flow, so what are we seeing in terms of the data? You've got a really big buildup of open interest here. So open interest is literally at the highs, so minus 0.16%, whereas price is not at the highs. So pretty interesting here. Potentially you're seeing open interest outpace price. So you'll see that signal if this makes a new high while price stays below its high. let's take the wick over here, then that's going to be a divergence. That means futures positions are building at a greater rate than price is moving higher. And that, of course, can mean one of two things. As you know, open interest is both a long and a short. You guys have seen this analysis time and time again. So if we can hold the H1 market structure and support the uptrend that we've got right now, this morning intraday, this can potentially set up a big short squeeze. We could even see a push to the highs today, as early as the New York session, potentially even breakout, if this build up here is shorts. Now, if we break the H1 market structure, which is currently here at 123.7K, then that becomes longs offside, and you can see a move down to this liquidity over here, where you're going to have a bunch of stops resting at 122.2K. So that's what you're watching. Lose the H1 market structure, and you can see an unwind as longs in this open interest. They have to close down as they got too excited, trying to preempt a big New York move today. If we can hold the H1 market structure, then you could see a big squeeze today. And then from there, does it reject the all-time high, or do we chop and actually build a more bullish path, build a base for higher? That's going to be yet to be seen. But so far, looks like we could see some explosive moves, given that positions are building at a very great rate and they're not closing. And they will be forced to close at some point. Price tends to head to places where either the longs or the shorts are going to get flush. So those are the paths I'm watching at on the low time frames. As long as the H1 market structure holds, that's good. And we can get a push to new highs, take out some shorts here. Anyone shorting is going to have their stop loss at the all-time high, so that's the target. If we can accept above the target, then that's going to be bullish and probably lead to continuation higher for a markup. Of course, if we don't, then you're going to see a reverse and we have to chop, consolidate longer. And if we break the H1 market structure, you're probably going to see a breakdown to take these longs out. And their stops are all going to be at the bottom of this wick over here. And that will, again, lead to your open interest getting wiped out. So that's what I'm looking at. We're seeing spot have actually been bidding. So spot CVD is at the highs. So that is the green. That is the market orders on the spot side. So they're buying heavily at the market, where perps are actually down. So this suggests to me that this probably is short building up here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the orange path, if not the green path, where we do get a move pushing up to that all-time high liquidity in the New York session. Again, you want to see Friday's high hold. You want to see the H1 market structure hold. If it doesn't, then you're looking at longs getting flush. But perp CVD has been shorting and net negative since the highs, whereas spot is much more positive. Therefore, spot led move, and that spot bid can push us up to areas where futures get liquidated, as that generates liquidity. And then you just want to see, again, do smart money use that liquidity generated as distribution to fill their sells, or do they use it to fuel a rally further? So that's it for the intraday levels on BTC. New York session has just begun. So what are we seeing? Low time frames? Well, some London longs are getting flushed. Obviously, anyone trying to preempt the move. Go to the super low time frame, 5 minute. They just so easily get wicked out here. They're getting 100x long. Again, it's the people that get long following the trend when price is so far away from any trend bands. Whereas the people who get long at the trend bands over here, this is the 15 minute, 50 EMA, they have your better buys because they're buying at an area where other traders and smart money algorithms are bidding instead of buying at the highs and then just getting risk of flushed out. So interesting, holding the August all-time high. So low time frame, if we can hold that, push to new highs on the cards, lose the August all-time high. I'm looking at Friday's high to hold on any support, as that's where the New York Bulls couldn't push past during last week's New York session. So got some targets higher for sure, and potentially a short squeeze, but watch your levels. Don't FOMO in, of course. Make sure you stick to your system, because there's always going to be another flush like this, which comes to your primary H150 AMA trend, which wrecks all the over leveraged. So it's all about time frame, guys. If you're taking a 15-minute, 5-minute long, make sure you get out within a few hours. You're not looking to moon hold, and you have your invalidation tight. because there's also a H1 trend. And if the H1 trend fails, there's also then going to be a 4-hour trend that starts to build. You're already seeing that now with the H4, 12, and 21 bands being that support zone. So eventually that will fail, and then you'll see the daily bands come into play. There will be a retest of these daily bands at some point. You've got all of this liquidity, which, whether it's from here, whether it's from higher, will eventually have some sort of flush. And that's going to take out a bunch of longs. And these bands can come up, come up, come up. So that's why you've got to understand your time frame, know what you're bidding on, know where you're wrong on that time frame, and not look to hold it on a different time frame to a lower target or move your stop or any of those, of course, inherently stupid things in trading. You've got to stick to your system, stick to your rules. If you're day trading, then take the day trade. If you're swing trading, then be patient. On the daily, you're not looking to get long here. It's a terrible place. You're right at the highs. You either want to see a clear breakout that can signal continuation higher, or you wait for a dip into your trend support. So, quick lesson on timeframes there. Something to think about. That is your intraday levels. Looking at ETH. So, we closed the week within this distribution zone. So, very good to see. ETH is moving pretty nicely, and I've got a path mapped out for ETH because we don't have to come to this interim support. And I mentioned that this would be bullish, higher highs and higher lows, but there's more than one way to build bullish price action. You don't have to just build that higher high, higher low structure. If we can consolidate with low volatility and build a base over here, then what that's going to do is that's building reaccumulation below resistance. And then when the breakout of that box occurs and you flip the resistance at 4640, which we previously haven't been able to accept above, it's led to flushes, led to flushes, led to flushes. If we can build a base below it, which we never did before, every time we just ramped up through. Whereas if we this time build a base below, that sets up a move that's going to lead to a breakout that actually continues, likely to all-time high, where you can then look to trade your long setups. So that's what I'd be looking at on ETH. If we can flip the resistance after building a base, I'd be looking for scalps, day trades to the all-time high liquidity, and potentially ETH this week can get some attention. You're already seeing a nice move here, and the reason for that is because Bitcoin has hit its all-time high. Bitcoin's taken its liquidity, whereas ETH still has liquidity there to target. So while some bulls may be looking at Bitcoin and saying, okay, we've hit liquidity, bulls on ETH are saying we haven't hit liquidity. And that's where you can see some profits rotate into Ethereum, which we're seeing even today. Nice push up to the highs already. So already pushing to Sunday's high. Whereas Bitcoin, of course, is off Sunday's high. So you're already seeing that play out. And that's the reason why, guys, if any of you are wondering. An intraday, of course, we have started to build a nice base. We have been holding the H150 EMA on ETH on this time frame. So again, if we're not going to see the daily time frame play out, and we are just going to see a move here where ETH actually has a H1 flip of this resistance, you again just want to see this base being built. Look to that H150, which has been holding as support. We briefly have closes below, but once it reclaims, that should trigger to get long on ETH. And if that's below resistance, it can set up a nice move where you can take some really nice scalps to target any of those higher liquidity levels over here, which we've got waiting on ETH over here, 4.8K, and of course the all-time high at 5K. So be watching ETH very carefully here because this is a really nice setup. 4-hour trend is being respected as well. So 12 and 21 bands on the 4-hour. Any dips into that level, you'd want to see hold as support and produce new highs again, as it has been. So I would look like this. Bands simply continue going higher as price wicks into them and then produces new highs off the bands. Again, you're coming into an area where you're building really nice structure, which allows for a potential markup move to come on ETH. Wouldn't be surprised to see that. So watching ETH carefully. If we don't get a nice daily base and we actually are just going to be bullish today, then you go to your lower time frames and you just play the faster trend. Simple as that. So that's it for Ethereum. We look at ETH Bitcoin. Is it time to go? Well, you want to see the daily bands flip green on this chart. At the moment, you've got red daily bands, which signals Bitcoin outperforming, which is good. That's what you want to see on a Bitcoin breakout. But as soon as ETH starts outperforming, bands flip green. that's when you actually want to look for ETH longs, and ETH momentum can take over. So watch this carefully. If these bands start to flip green, you're probably going to see that setup play out. As I mentioned, you're going to get a push up to the highs on ETH as it takes its respective all-time high liquidity, since Bitcoin has already taken it. And if it's going to outperform, you're going to see these bands flip green on ETH Bitcoin. So definitely a long setup there, potentially on ETH, as well as, of course, the two trade of the weeks that I mentioned on Bitcoin. When we look at Solana, so what are we seeing? Well, we're pushing back up into this trap zone where sellers previously came. So now you're just watching, does price actually compress within this pattern over here, like the orange path? Or can we break above 240 and retest it then as support? That's going to be something like the green path then. So I'm looking at 240. If 240 holds as resistance, then I'll be looking at the orange path compression pattern to form. If 240 can flip and we accept in this previous trap zone, then I'll be looking for support to come in if we drop back below to 240 to lead to new highs. So Solana, not as interesting until we can break above the compression, break above 240. That could set up momentum higher. Otherwise, you're just looking at price to chop, consolidate. Again, anything above the yearly open is setting up for a move for higher eventually on Sol. Just have to be patient. And if we are going to go higher now, then you just simply wait for your green path trigger. Super, super simple. And if we look at any trend support, what are we seeing? Well, daily bands are flipping red, green, so not really providing support. That shows ranging, choppy action, which is exactly what we got. Instead, you got the 100 EMA producing support, and potentially this 50 EMA, once that was reclaimed, produced support. So I'll be looking for any dips into there on the orange path. 100 EMA to hold as support if we get it. Otherwise, potentially, you want to go to your lower time frames. If we flip 240, then what bands are being respected? That's what you have to look for. And currently, there aren't really any bands being respected. Could say your 4-hour bands are, but overall, you're in chop, you're within a consolidation, you're below the highs. That's why Bitcoin and ETH are more favorable right now. And as you guys know, coin selection, very important. So watching the New York session today, back to Bitcoin quickly. Let's look at the volume. Start to see it ramp up. So you want to see volume pick up again if we do start to break out to new highs. If volume can beat Friday's volume, which is going to be very hard, you had 1 billion of ETF inflows. That's going to set up for a breakout higher, which could even see 127, 128K today if you get that harmony. Not sure if we can do that, but that's why the Friday high is very important if we do dip back down, because this is where 1 billion of inflows got put in. So do the ETFs bid that price again? Do they show support there, or do they let it fall through again? Back to my previous analysis, and then we look at the lower levels. So that's really it for the markets today. When we look at gold, what are we seeing? Well, gold just continues chatting. What a chart if you are a trend following trader, just new highs every single day. And really now you've got this 4K round number level where you want to see if we do push above it, are there any signs of exhaustion like this over here? So you get a green candle, try to break out, then it immediately gets retraced the next day. That's a sign of exhaustion like this. So you have a green candle over here, which breaks out and immediately gets retraced in the next 2 days. That's a sign of exhaustion. And exhaustion doesn't mean bearish. It can just lead to consolidation. But overall, it's when you start to see the breakouts get fully reversed and mean reverted, where you go from trend following to mean reversion. So we're not seeing any signs of that yet. We are above the daily market structure, it's 3868. So as long as we stay above that, expect new highs. And until we see some sort of reversion of a green day, a big breakout day, expect price to continue higher. But if we do see that, then expecting something like the orange path maybe, and it is that 4K level, which will be interesting, fall back below there and likely sets up chop consolidation, which is going to be good for Bitcoin. Again, if you watched Weekly Outlook yesterday, you know, very important for BTC. If gold can consolidate, that allows the flows to be focused on Bitcoin, which can allow for a markup as it gets the attention rather than capital flowing into gold. And of course, if we do just flip 4K like the green path, then maybe you see this chart just chat on higher. Yet to be seen. So watching out how gold reacts to 4K. If we push above it, is there signs of exhaustion, or do we continue flipping it into support and push on higher? And when it comes to stocks, similar story. So it's risk on. Slow grind higher continues. What are you seeing? Well, daily 12 and 21 bands are just producing new highs after new highs after new highs. So until that stops, expect it to continue. And you have support levels lower, of course. Previous all-time high at 6166, nowhere near. So you have to lose the 12 and 21 bands. You have to lose this order block over here before we even think about some sort of risk off move on stocks. So until then, and as long as this order block holds, you're seeing stocks very bullish. They're just slow grind high, and that is risk on. So watch for those 12 and 21 bands to hold. Watch for this order block to hold. If we do lose the order block, then it probably leads to a move back, at least to fill some of these gaps over here. But until then, expect higher. No signs of risk off yet on stocks, and that's been seen best through the dollar. So off FOMC, we check this chart over here. We look at the dollar. We are seeing that we rallied off FOMC, but since then we found some resistance. So watching to see if this chart breaks out higher or breaks out lower from this box over here to see if we're going to get the next risk off move, if this moves up, or the risk on move, if this continues moving down. Of course, this chart is high time frame bearish, so very interesting to see which way this moves. We can still bounce even if bearish, but break below the box, I'd expect risk on, and break above the box, I'd expect a risk off move. So interesting to see what way that breaks, because again, did have that bullish reaction off FOMC, off that sweep, but potentially that's just going to set up for lower now. Keep an eye on that this week. That's going to be very telling of where capital is flowing and how investor sentiment is feeling about the market. So that is the full update. If you guys want to look for a place to trade in crypto, I've got a couple links below to two exchanges that I trade on that give you 20% cash back on all your trading fees. If you guys are day traders and scalpers like me, you'll know that trading fees can take up a lot of your profits, and that can instantly save you 20% of your profits that you would otherwise lose. So check them out if you like. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, drop a subscribe, drop a comment, drop a like. Let me know. Let's boost the algorithm. You value content from a real trader. Let's keep pushing this channel so that I can keep pushing you guys content and I know you guys like them. And we'll send this thing to the moon. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Enjoy trading today's New York session. Focuses on Bitcoin and Ethereum really. And otherwise, look at how the other charts are setting up.